to hear a clear, crisp signal. Also, on the WebEx portion of our webinar, so what you can see on your computers, you'll notice that there's a chat option. So you can write to us. Robin is manning the controls for today's webinar. So if you have any particular questions, having any technical difficulties, feel free to ask on the webinar or go ahead and use that chat function on the WebEx software program itself. So we'll move forward. I'd like to give you just a little bit of a brief overview of the things that you will hear us talk about today. The focus really is on, you know, I'm so sorry, guys. I wanted to do one last introduction. I believe we have some representation from our MIECHV partners here. Wendy, did you want to have a quick hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Happy to hear, Wendy. Thanks so much for joining, and sorry about that delay.
No problem.
Just to reiterate, today's topic is all about the fiscal year 16 QI Learning Collaboratives. Things are going to look a little bit different, but a lot the same. So we really want to take some time to talk about the things that will be the same from previous learning collaboratives, what you might notice as being different this year, and what's always burning on people's minds, what are the expectations and responsibilities of this year's learning collaborative? So that's where we'll spend our time today. We'll talk about the topics that have been selected for this, the fiscal year 16 learning collaborative work that we'll be doing. We're going to talk to you about the model for improvement, and this is really the science behind learning collaboratives using quality improvement, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'd like to share with you a collaborative timeline just to make sure everyone's on the same page of when our learning sessions will be and when there are important deadlines and milestones in our project work this year. As I mentioned, we'll go through some collaborative expectations, not only what you can expect from your MPHI partners, but also MDHHS and what your individual local implementing agencies are going to be responsible for and expected to do. There is a little bit of pre-work, so some homework before our first learning session in November. We'll talk about that. This is always an opportune time when one fiscal year ends and a new one starts. It's always a great chance to make sure that everybody is feeling comfortable and understood on what the Home Visiting Initiative's QI requirements are, so we'll go through that. We will also talk about next steps. So what's coming up? What do we need to focus on in the next couple of weeks? What are the things that are coming in? And of course, that we will always leave time at the end for additional questions. That's not to say that if you have questions throughout, please feel free to ask them. We want to make sure that everybody leaves feeling comfortable and ready to get started with the great work that we're all going to do in fiscal year 16. So I mentioned that we would talk about the collaborative topics, and we are going to do that now. So you got a glimpse of some of this in the last grantee meeting, but we have two particular topics that our local implementing agencies will be focusing on. So we'll have two separate learning collaboratives for local implementing agencies. They will be focused on home visiting program enrollment and home visiting program retention. So what we can kind of expect those things to kind of mean, when we talk about program enrollment, it's pretty robust here. We're thinking not only about the networks of referrals that are coming in from your community members and from individuals within the community, but also the process perhaps for your local implementing agency. What happens when you receive a referral? Focusing also on the enrollment process. What is the actual protocol for getting a client from referral to full enrollment status, and other supports that your home visiting program may need to tweak or improve to really support program enrollment. In terms of home visiting program retention, we've broken this out to give some other ideas into four different subcategories of program retention. So we've conceptualized this as first being that early intense engagement of how to engage with families when they first become enrolled in your program. Building on family strengths so that families truly see the value and the need and the value add of the program in their lives, thus keeping them retained longer in your program. Same thing goes for meeting families' needs, making sure that we're going from an approach of our model allows, making sure that families' needs are identified and met through your program. And of course, building trusting relationships. That's an important component of retaining your families and retaining clients. in your program. So these are what we'll look for, or what you can look for as the upcoming collaborative topics. It's important right now for me to be planting a seed. So your team should start thinking about which of these areas your data show some opportunities for improvement. You are going to have a chance to let us know which learning collaborative your team prefers to be a part of. So we really ask you in the coming week to really think about your current data. So that's looking at your enrollment data, looking at your retention data, and start thinking about which of these topic areas make best sense for your team to be a part of next year's learning collaboratives. So with that, I'd actually like to talk a little bit more in depth with you all about why these ideas, why these topics are so important to our work. So a question I'd like to throw out to the group, so feel free to unmute yourselves, and even you can just shout out some of your ideas. I'd like to ask you, why do you think program enrollment and retention are important QI learning collaborative topics?
Hi, this is Shirley. I would say that they're both important because without them, we would not even have nurse-family partnership.
That's a very, very good point. Both and retention really are the foundation of having our clients to begin with. So that was a really astute point, Amy. Thanks. Share some ideas of why program enrollment and retention are important QI learning collaborative topics.
This is from Hurley. I would have to say that to give them the quality of care that our program offers, we need them in the program and, staying consistently milestones.
We talked before about sort of the dose of home visiting, and that's certainly a really important part of being able to implement the model, having people enrolled and retained for long enough to be receiving enough home visiting service to have that improved outcome. What else?
This is Julie. Our funders are looking at enrollment and retention as far as how they're going to continue to fund our programs.
That's a really important point for us all to be considering, and something that is one of the reasons that these topics came to the table for us to be focusing on in fiscal year 16. So thanks, Julie. Great point. What else are program enrollment and retention important learning collaborative topics to you all?
Hi. Our objective is ultimately to graduate the clients from the program, so retention is important because we want to keep them engaged, interested in the program.
We certainly can't get them to their 24-month visit or their graduation if they drop out earlier than that, right? Aspects to you all when thinking about program enrollment and retention, and why this is an important area of focus. Well, I think with a really good list, and I think what I heard really resonates with some of the reasons that these topics got brought up anyways in the first place, that our program implementation, the model implementation, really relies on two very basic things: getting people in the door, getting those clients enrolled and converted from referrals to fully enrolled clients, and then keeping them engaged and retained in the program long enough for them to get enough of the model, enough of their home visits to really improve their outcomes and hopefully make it to graduation. So these are really, really critical aspects of our home visiting initiative itself. So I think that these are wonderful places for us to be able to focus on this year, and a couple reasons why they got brought up in the first place. We are going to dive deeper into the science of learning collaboratives. So this is actually a picture that I believe some of you have seen already. Can't remember if we showed you in the the last grantee meeting or not, but this is a little of a fancy diagram, but I'm going to walk you through it because this is really a picture that shows us the structure of QI Learning Collaboratives. So we've talked about learning collaboratives in the past. You've all been a part of them in the past. But just to give a little bit of background on QI Learning Collaboratives, this is something that's used really widely in healthcare settings to really translate what's known about what works, the best practices, really integrating them actually to the front lines of practice. This is something that really, within a health focus, really focused first on line providers, so healthcare systems, hospitals, primary care, and it's really growing as a tool in public health and home visiting settings. You've all heard probably of the home visiting coin. This is a QI Learning Collaborative and one that's actually very unique in the history of learning collaboratives because it focuses solely on home visiting programs. So we're essentially taking the same science and the same methodology behind that home visiting coin that you've heard of and tweaking it to be able to use best with our local implementing agencies and local leadership groups here in Michigan with the Michigan Home Visiting Initiative. So I'll walk you through this model just quickly. What you'll notice, we'll start over on the left-hand side. The top blue box is select a topic. So this has already been done in our case. We looked at the data. We looked at some of the important things that not only our funders were looking at, but our partners at MIECHV were looking at. Also got some information from our local implementing agencies and local leadership groups about things that are particularly important. So those topics were selected. We then moved to gathering information from experts, and this is actually something that you've all already been a part of. We collected information from you all through a brainstorming activity that you did with your teams and then sent your information over to us, giving ideas on things that have worked for you in the past in terms of what's improved program enrollment and improved program retention. So that was one of our first steps in gathering information from experts. We also held a focus group with families about getting more information from them about tactics and techniques that really help them continue to stay engaged in their programming. So we really looked not only to the information from our internal experts here in the state of you all conducting the services and the families receiving the services, but also looked to the home visiting coin and other literature that's out there that tells us a little bit more about what we know about home visiting program enrollment and program retention. So from there, we actually, and we're actively here right now, we're developing the change package. And you heard a little bit about what that was at the last grantee meeting, and we're going to go further in depth of that change package in just a couple minutes. Essentially, you can kind of think about this as a bit of a playbook. So this is something that you can look at. It's one-stop shopping for knowing what some of the key drivers are for particular areas of improvement, some particular areas that we know can be improved to see improvement in these areas. And this will make a lot more sense in a minute when I show you this. You'll see another circle here, not only developing the change package and planning for the first learning session, but you can see the other circle where participants are completing pre-work. And we will start on that after today's webinar concludes when you all have your pre-work assignments. And this is all leading up to our first of 3 learning sessions. So you see the green boxes are our learning sessions. This is no different than in the past. So in our past few fiscal years, we've had 3 learning sessions throughout the course of the fiscal year. The purpose of these are similar across all 3, but each has sort of its own theme of its focus. So on that first learning session, it's really our chance to get everybody together, introduce and discuss the change package, the measurement strategies, to really help you all have that important foundational team time to start developing your team charters, your particular plans for your tasks and timelines for what your plan, do, study, act cycles are going to look like. That then pushes everybody back out to home where they have their first action period. So I want to point out that we're using some pretty technical terms here, but in a lot of ways this is not different than what you've seen in the past. So our learning sessions, and those are those grantee meetings that you've been to in the past, where we focus a segment of our time on our learning collaborative work. And in the learning sessions, we in the past have also had action periods. This is just presented in a more technical term. So the action periods are when you are back home at your local implementing agency, truly testing out your tests for improvement, where you found opportunities to make improvements. So that's what those action periods are in between the learning sessions. We plan to get back together for learning session 2, and this is really a chance for us to check in, get more ideas of things that can be tested, more ideas of what's working and what's maybe not working as well on the ground, to really see how the collaboratives as wholes are assessing, are making progress, to see how everybody is interacting with the change package, if there's anything that we need to add or tweak for future collaborative work. As always, we really want to take our time together in the learning sessions, particularly that second one, to really get a chance to hear from you all. What's working for you? What's been an aha moment or barriers that you've encountered when you've taken your QI work back to your local implementing agency? And if there's any questions about how we're measuring data through our data measurement system, we'll make sure that we answer them then. At that point, we go back to our local communities and continue our plan, do, study, act cycles before we're able to get back together for learning session 3. And hopefully you've remembered this from the past, but learning session 3 is really a chance to celebrate all of the work that we've done. You all do such incredible work in the communities, and this learning collaborative work and the QI work that you do is sort of icing on the cake to your commitment to your clientele. So this is a chance for us to say, wow, guys, look what we learned this year. Look at the strides that we made towards program enrollment and program retention. We want to hear from you all of what worked well, where we can improve things for future years. And we really want to make sure that we spend some time in learning session 3 thinking about how do we hold these gains? How do we continue with the momentum that you all have created throughout this fiscal year's Learning Collaborative and make sustainable changes and implement the things that have been working really well for your teams through your quality improvement work. You'll see the black box at the bottom. This has not changed at all either. The supports that you have are through email, phone, not only with the QI advisors here at MPHI, but also having monthly data tracking and monthly updates where you're going to be able to tell us in a little bit quicker time than we've done in the past how things are going, what your data are looking like, and we will be able to provide better support along the way, knowing a little bit more in depth what your teams are working on. So just a couple of similarities that you'll see. This has actually been a very similar model that we've used in the past. Nothing's really changed about the structure itself. We've had those learning sessions and action periods just like before, and you have the same supports. When you have a question about your learning collaborative work, call me, email me. These parts have not changed. It is a little bit different, and we'll talk more in depth in just a little bit, is the concept of this change package, where we are essentially going to be handing over to you some of the best practices that we've learned from you all and your colleagues in home visiting, the literature, other collaborative work, really being a one-stop shop for things that we see as being promising ways that other agencies have been able to make positive changes in their enrollment and retention. Another thing that's changing is you'll hear us start saying PDSA cycles, and in this round of learning collaboratives, we're really encouraging teams to take a little bit of a step back into smaller PDSA improvements, so biting off a little bit smaller of a chunk, but biting off multiple chunks throughout the course of the fiscal year. And we are going to walk you through what that looks like and help your team move from one cycle throughout the entire fiscal year to perhaps more than one cycle throughout the fiscal year. So let me actually show you the model for improvement, and something that I know that you've all seen before. So you might remember from your previous QI trainings with us that quality improvement aims to answer 3 questions, 3 key questions, being what are we trying to accomplish, how we know that a change is an improvement, And what changes can we make that will result in improvement? And we use those questions to really guide our quality improvement work. And as you all know, we use the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle of coming up with an idea in terms of an objective of an improvement that you want to focus on, testing that idea out on a small scale, looking backwards and saying, what did we learn from this? Did it make a change that we would call an improvement? And then deciding what you're going to do with that. So in a very, very quick nutshell, that's the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle. Like I mentioned before, the Model for Improvement aims to answer the 3 key questions. Like I said before, what are we trying to accomplish? This has already been done through some of the work that we've already done to prepare our Learning Collaborative work in selecting a topic and setting aim statements for each of our collaboratives. We make sure that our work answers the question of how will we know that a change is improvement. This is embedded in the measurement strategy that we are working on here at MPHI. We'll be regularly collecting data. It will be on a monthly basis, and we'll be measuring progress with you all on a much shorter ongoing basis. So we'll be looking at outcome, process, and balancing measures to make sure that we're getting the full picture of how your tests for improvement are impacting the overall aim that we're working towards. Lastly, we always want to make sure that our QI work is answering what changes can we make that will result in an improvement. And a lot of this foundation has been laid through your own brainstorming that you've shared with us, that work with focus groups for families, and looking to the literature and other home visiting collaboratives to create the change package. So within this change package that you'll see in a moment, we really are focusing and drilling deeper into the things that we believe really cause some of the problems that we have with enrollment and retention, and some really concrete, very, very specific ideas of tips and tricks that your team can just pull off the page and implement in small Plan, Do, Study, Act cycles. You've seen this slide before at our previous, at our last grantee meeting. What is a change package? I keep talking about this change package, and I want to be able to give you a little bit more information and show you an example of a change package, which I'll do in a moment. Change package is a document for a specific process improvement area that has several different components. A SMART aim statement. This is nothing new to you all. This is the goal that all teams in the Learning Collaborative are working towards. That's that pie in the sky target that everybody is working towards. A change package has change concepts. You'll also hear these be called primary drivers, and these are common strategies that can be put in place to address that root cause of the problem. We've talked a lot about root cause analysis over the last few years, and this Learning Collaborative model doesn't change that. We really want to make sure that we're thinking deeply about what is causing areas for improvement or opportunities for improvement to even exist within your particular agency. So we'll focus also on those strategies that can attack the root cause of the problem. We'll also be outlining some key changes. You'll see those noted as they're also called secondary drivers. These are specific areas, they're sub-ideas essentially within the change concepts where key changes can be made to address those root causes. This will make better sense in just a minute when you see one. And then lastly, every change package will also have very specific changes. These are the change ideas. So these are those very particular strategies that have been employed and are known to have promising results that can be implemented to work towards improvement. And I'd actually like to show you what a change package looks like. This is actually the package for our home visiting coin work that's being done. This is the family engagement key driver diagram. So this is what a change package, in at least one version of a change package looks like. Our package for this year's Learning Collaboratives will in structure look similarly to this. So a couple of things to point out. You see that SMART aim all the way over in the box on the left-hand side? This is the target and the goal that everybody who's in this Learning Collaborative are focusing on. Those primary drivers, you relate this in some ways to the root cause analysis that you've seen done and that your teams have done that really dig a little bit deeper into what contributes to the problem and what's going to really be an area that you can make a positive improvement if you focus on through looking at the secondary drivers, which are a bit more specific. They drill a little bit deeper into those primary drivers of being more specific areas that your team can focus improvement efforts on. You'll find the most specific information all the way over on the right, and these are even more subcategories of the root causes of our problem and ideas for potential solutions. These are very specific ideas from secondary drivers that have been proven by practice or proven by literature to be things that your team could do to try to really tackle those the primary drivers that your team has decided to focus on. So let's actually look a little bit deeper into PDSA cycles, because as you notice, all of our action periods come right back to this. And this, I doubt this looks by any means new to you all. This is sort of the heart of the quality improvement work that we've been doing for the past 4 years with our home visiting programs here in Michigan. PDSA is the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, and this is what you'll actually see yourselves doing just as before in previous learning collaboratives during those action periods. So when you're planning, you're looking at objectives. You're deciding what is this particular target, or what's the purpose of conducting this particular QI cycle. Creating some questions and predictions. Those are oftentimes stated as if-then statements or if-then theories. These are the questions that can be answered by the cycle and what your team really thinks is going to happen within this PDSA cycle. We always encourage, and we'll continue to do this, to think through those who, what, where, and whens of who's going to carry out this work and how will we be collecting data along the way. We move from plan into do. This is when you actually implement your test for improvement. I'll emphasize that we're really in this round of collaboratives looking for small tests of improvements. We'll provide an example of that in just a minute. During the do stage, you are implementing that small test for improvement. Along the way, you're documenting problems and unexpected observations, and you're collecting data along the way. And we are going to provide you with the way that you'll be doing that as we get the learning collaborative kicked off. From do, when you're done testing out your small skill test for improvement, you move to study, and this is really simple. You're looking to say, what did we learn from this? Comparing your baseline with your most current data, you're completing that analysis of data, you're comparing your data to your predictions. So did we meet the goal that we set out in our plan stage, and what is it that we really learned from this project? So that you can move to the act stage when your team really is able to decide, are we going to adapt this in another QI cycle and learn a little bit more about it? Are we going to adopt it as our new standard of practice? Or are we going to abandon this? Was this not an improvement that we are going to pursue any further? Or was this not a particular strategy that we will pursue any further? And really start thinking about where do we want to go from here? What will our next QI cycle look like? It's helpful to see this all in an example. And here you can see how we've aligned our 3 key questions with the aspects of learning collaborative methodology that really help embed those important components of QI within the work that we're doing as a collaborative. So I'll remind you, we want to make sure our QI work focuses on what are we trying to accomplish. So an example here comes with not only the topic selection but the aim. So in this particular example, this team is focusing on home visiting program enrollment. And to answer that question, what are we trying to accomplish, they answer with this, that by December 1st of 2015, the Sunny County Early Head Start program will increase program enrollment from 80% to 90%. That tells everybody involved with this exactly what the team is trying to accomplish through this PDSA cycle. We want to make sure that we're answering how will we know that a change is an improvement, and we do that through a measurement strategy, through collecting data, analyzing the data, and comparing it all. So for this particular project, the team has decided that their strategy to know whether a change is improvement is that they'll be collecting and tracking the percentage of families enrolled, the number of referrals received, and the percentage of referrals enrolled. Looking again a little bit deeper at that change package, package, that's going to answer that last question of what change can we make that will result in improvement. So this team looked at the change package provided. They said, you know what, we really need to work on developing our referral process. That's one of the root causes of why we're having trouble within this area, or where we could really improve. So they're focusing on developing the referral process. More specifically, they want to make sure that within this cycle, they're focusing on referrals being followed up in a timely manner. And the key change that they're going to test out is follow-up with referral via phone within 5 working days of receipt. So you can see that that is very specific, and it's a very small change that they're putting some structure to try out and see if it's able to get them a little bit closer to their overall aim. So let's look a little bit deeper into this particular example. So they set themselves up very likely at learning session 1. They then went into their action period where they took their work back home and they're ready to get things started. So here you see that plan, do, study, act cycle with this particular team's notable notes of each cycle. So you can see that within the plan period, they came up a little bit deeper with what it is that they want to test out and what they want to answer. So they decided that the program manager would follow up with referrals received during November within 5 working days. They thought that that might get them a little bit closer to seeing an improvement, and that's what they wanted to test out. During the due stage, the program manager followed up with 2/3 of the referrals received within 5 working days by phone, and of that, 1/3 of the referrals received were enrolled. The team then said, what does this tell us? What can we learn from this? So they looked at their data and they noticed that they had 3 referrals received. 2/3 of those referrals, so 66%, were followed up on within 5 working days, and one of those particular referrals ended up being enrolled. They went and said, okay, so what do we do with this? And in the act stage, they decided as a team that the process showed some success. The change would be kept in place and tested for another month. So they didn't have as much data as they wanted, but they thought, you know, this is promising. So we're going to adapt it a little bit by testing it out a little bit longer. So that's what they decided to act upon within this particular PDSA cycle. So the next screen really shows you this concept of us moving more towards small improvements stacked up on each other. So here, this is, take a look at the aim that you can see in the upper left-hand corner, that by 9/1/16, Michigan Home Visiting Initiative local implementing agencies will increase the percent of open slots that are filled within 1 month. This is just one example of how we test these smaller cycles and how they lead to improvement and really build towards implementation. So you see these multiple PDSA cycles rolling up the ramp. And in the sort of heavy text on the right lower side, you can see the particular changes that this team or an example team would try out. So you see at the very bottom that the team decided that they would follow up with referral by phone within 5 working days of receipt. This is a continuation of that last example that we talked about. And look how this team conceptualized stacking up smaller changes to see if that moves towards improvement. So the lowest, screen you can see the PDSA cycle that's the lowest, C1, that happened in November. And the LIA decided at this step we're going to revise the protocol for referral follow-up. So that's what they focused their efforts on in that first month. They decided that they were ready to move forward in the next month, so they rolled into another smaller mini cycle. So cycle 2, you see in December, the program manager followed up with referrals by phone within 5 working days of receipt. They looked at this, like we mentioned in the last slide, they looked at that and they said, okay, there's some good things about this, but we don't have enough data, so we need to do it a little bit longer to collect more data since we only had 3 referrals to really work on. So in January, 1 more month of a cycle, they decided they would do the same thing, that the program manager will follow up with referrals by phone within 5 working days of receipt. After that, the team thought, we have enough information to tweak this further and add another change to this. And you can see that in cycle 4, that happened in the month of February, the program manager assigns referrals to home visitors, and they follow up by phone within 5 working days of receipt. So I hope that this is in some ways an example and kind of sets the foundation of seeing how small changes done throughout the course of a learning collaborative can really add onto each other and can eventually result in an improvement in the outcomes that we're looking for. I think I might take just a quick second because that is a lot of sort of science behind learning collaboratives. It's a lot of information to take in. So before we go more deeply into what the nitty-gritty details of this upcoming learning collaborative will look like, I want to take a minute to check in with you guys. What questions do you have for me? Now, I'm usually very crystal clear about things, but I also know that this is a lot to handle. So what questions have come up? Where are there areas where you think, I need a little bit more information about that before I can really think about how to engage in this learning collaborative?
Yeah, for me, it's just getting the terminology between the primary, secondary, and the change idea, that type of thing, and just kind of learning definitions, kind of retraining my brain.
That, Andrea, not because I want you confused, but because I had the same issue when I was learning this science. I promise you it will make a lot more sense when you have the change package in front of you. And when we get together at that very first learning session, that's going to be a big focus of the work that we do together. So something that I think is really important is we use these fancy terms because that's what sort of the makers of these models have come up with. But once we dive a little bit deeper and you have a better example sitting in front of you, I can almost guarantee that these things are going to relate to more tangible terms that you are all used to. This is actually very similar to the QI work that we're doing. We build our QI work on root cause analysis and identifying potential solutions based on best practices and promising practices in the literature. This is just a different way to sort of structure them, but I think that you will see some familiarities from our work once you have something in front of you. But I will acknowledge that this piece is really confusing with all of the terms, but I feel like I can almost guarantee that will make better sense, particularly after the first learning session, when we can just go deeper in detail together.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you. What are other things that are crossing your mind as we talk about the background and the structure of our learning collaborative?
With Kalamazoo.
All
of the things that you're make sense. I don't know that I'm going to actually have any questions until I actually start working with it.
Makes a lot of sense to me, and I think that that's the pattern that we saw when we were first implementing QI itself, that some of this really just needs to be practiced, it needs to be hands-on, and that's actually one of the really important foundations of why we want to get together 3 times in the next fiscal year, is to make sure that we have more on time to get those questions answered, and also why I want to make sure that you all are further reminded that when those questions do pop up, you know how to get in touch with me so that we can work through them together. Well, you know, I'm gonna give Marcy and her team a heads up that I'm gonna ask you a question in just a second. We have been really lucky because in the state of Michigan, we've actually had a fair amount of our local implementing agencies already well practiced in this learning collaborative structure, and that is through our programs that have participated with the home visiting coin. So our Oakland team is one team that's actually on the call right now that has gone through this process, and they have used a structure really similarly to this. So I'm wondering if there are any important lessons learned, or if the Oakland team would like to just share a little bit of their experience in using this, this sort of brand and the structure of learning collaboratives.
As we're listening, you know, really this is pretty much very parallel to what we've been doing in COIN, and we're in these processes. This PDSA cycle is more meaningful for us to use. We found over time we can do the smaller, look at smaller changes, and we used to, in the previous QI process, we would always pick larger projects that really maybe weren't as meaningful. So we did learn that lesson, that it's really important to look at a small change, and everyone doing it as a collaborative together, you get to that ultimate goal. The other thing that's more meaningful is it sort of replaces, you look at it in a different way with the affinity diagram, the fishbone diagram. In this process, you don't use those. You use a different type of, in the change process, you use a different process with coming up with your root cause, and it flows a little better, it makes a little more sense. I think everybody seems to understand it. So it's really a nice way to look at a CQI project, and I think we have seen a lot of change, especially in our topic in maternal depression. I don't know if any of the team has anything to add with this. Thinking heads. So I think once everyone gets used to it, I wouldn't be concerned. I think you'll catch on quickly. It'll make sense. And I think you'll probably see this as a better process for your teams.
I couldn't have said it any better than that, Marcy. Thank you so much for sharing your team's experiences. I'm really excited to hear that that with the work that you've already been able to do through the home visiting coin, that you feel positive about the home visiting initiative itself, moving our learning collaboratives into that more structured method. And I think that you're right. I think that in some ways this more structured method, it feels exactly that. It feels very structured, and I think some teams, you will notice that difference in structure of having more frequent data reporting, more frequent updates, but at the end of the day, it's really all meant to making sure that our improvement efforts are really moving towards improvement and really keeping our teams on track and keeping us able to best help you all by making sure that you have all the data that you need on a regular basis, that we know where your projects are going, and that it's set up in a way so that every ounce of energy that you spend in QI, you will see an outcome from, because we know how valuable your time is, we know how valuable your energies are, and we really want to make sure that we're getting all the bang for our buck when we're doing that CQI work. And this learning collaborative methodology is a very true and tested way of doing that. So thanks so much, Marcy. And if you don't mind, I feel like you guys might be an important connection to our teams as they move forward. They might not be ready to ask me questions about the learning collaborative, but they might be ready to ask others who've participated. So our Oakland team has participated in the home visiting coin. Our Ingham team has participated in the home visiting coin, as well as our Detroit and Calhoun teams. So if you are quite ready to ask me about learning collaboratives, feel free to chat with other NFP programs that have been a part of learning collaboratives in the past. So we're going to nitty-gritty details, but before that, I'll just ask one more, if there's any more questions that are lingering. Anybody have a question they want to ask? So if you do have questions, otherwise I'll make sure we check in at the end. Here is our learning collaborative timeline, and this is what you can expect our important deadlines and milestones to look like in this fiscal year's learning collaborative work. So we are at that on the far left side. that between October and our first meeting on November 12th, we are doing all of the QI Learning Collaborative planning and pre-work. We are in the midst of finalizing the change package and the measurement strategies here on the MPHI side, and you all, at the end of this webinar, will have some pre-work to start on as we move forward. Before that first learning session that you see on the bottom, on November 12th of 2015, we'll have our first learning session. After that, you'll go back home to your local implementing agencies, and that'll be your first action period. So from after that first learning session on November 12th to April 1st of 2016, that's your first action period, and that's when we are going to ask you to complete your first PDSA cycle. In time during that action period, you'll be doing monthly data collection reporting to us. And that will conclude that first action period with our second learning session on April 21st. We'll get back together, check in, see how things are going, and get plans for your next PDSA cycles going, which will happen in that second action period. So from April 21st to September 1st of 2016, that's your second action period where you'll go back home, you'll think about your next PDSA cycle or cycles, and you'll complete it. Again, conducting that monthly data collection and reporting back to MPHI before our final learning session of the year. That'll happen on September 22nd, actually of 2016. That'll be our third learning session where we'll really take some time to look backwards on the progress made, see what we learned about the change package, if we picked any additional strategies that teams really were able to zero in on and learn something about, and then we'll, of course, talk about what the plans are for the next round of learning collaboratives. This round of learning collaboration in fiscal year 6, it's going to last 10 months in total. So it's always helpful for you guys to know what you can expect of us and our MDHHS partners. As I've mentioned, we are in the process of developing the technical content for this learning collaborative. So those are the change packages that you all had a good deal of input in through brainstorms that you were able to share with us. We're taking information from you all, from the families that we've gathered information from in focus groups. We're looking to the literature, we're looking to the home visiting coin, and we are just really looking to see what do we know about practices that can improve program enrollment and retention, and how can we create a change package that is essentially one-stop shopping for all of those promising practices and best practices that we know of. The companion to the change package is our measurement strategy. So we are focusing on that right now and drafting it pretty much as I speak. At each learning collaborative, we'll have no more than 8 measures per collaborative. We are really looking to figure out a way that you can collect some very simple measures that will tell you how your team is progressing and what kind of outcomes you're getting from your work. We will create a collection tool that is simple, easy to use, and has some instantaneous data graphing options for you all, and we'll unveil both of those things at the first learning session. We are planning the learning sessions now, so we're coming up with our agenda for our first learning sessions and making sure that we have everything that we need ready to set you all off for success in your action periods. As you all make it through your action periods and are submitting your monthly data reports and your team updates, we're reviewing those, and we'll create actually what we think will be a very helpful summary that has all of your updates within it that you'll all get to see on a regular basis. So before, we would have our community learning quarterly calls where you would all run through the updates of your projects. This is actually going to be sort of a cognate to that you will actually see a monthly update that lists out everyone's progress in their learning collaborative work, so that you can keep tabs on what other people are doing and learn from it within your own application. We will also, as always, be providing support to you all during the action period. So whenever you need guidance and coaching, please feel free. Pick up the phone, call me, stop by, whatever works for you. You can expect that guidance and coaching will continue from MPHI. So that moves us over to what we expect of you all within this Learning Collaborative year. A lot of this has not changed. The first is that we look for everyone to attend and participate in all 3 in-person learning sessions, and those are embedded within our Michigan Home Visiting Initiative grantee meetings. We want you to be able to say that you've completed at least 2 action periods. You have small PDSA cycles within your 2 action periods. This might be 2 small cycles. This might be more based on the needs of your group. We will help you select how to move on from cycle to cycle and how to sort of how to structure your team in the best way. But you'll do those small PDSA cycles in the 2 action periods between learning sessions 1 and 2 and then 2 and 3. We expect that you'll be doing ongoing data collection and updates. So this is a little bit different than in the past. We are going to be asking for monthly data submission on your particular collaborative measures. Those will be due to us on the 15th of every month, and they will reflect the previous month's data collection efforts. We'll look for, also within that same data collection structure that we'll be giving you, you'll have a space to provide monthly updates on your team's progress. So that's something that, like I said, will go hand in hand with your monthly data submission, and it will be the basis of that monthly update that I'm able to send out to you all saying, hey, this is what the other teams are working on right now, this is what they've learned from this cycle, and this is where they're going with it. We hope that you will review those monthly collaborative updates that I'm able to compile from all of your own individual team updates. I'll send them out to you all no later than the 30th of each month so that you really have a chance to know what's happening on the ground with your fellow NFP programs, what you're doing within the Learning Collaborative, and how you can learn from each other and collaborate in a bit more of a robust way. And always, we want you to connect with us when you have questions. So I really expect that if you're wondering what the next steps are, if you're feeling like you're stuck, if you need clarification, that you're really reaching out for that support, guidance, and coaching as your team needs it along the way. I mentioned that there's a little bit of pre-work, and here are mapped out. So the first thing that your team should be thinking about in terms of homework between now and the learning session needs to happen actually about in the next week. We want you to be thinking about which particular Learning Collaborative topic your team is interested in. So again, look at your data, talk with your teams, and send me an email by close of business on Monday, October 25th, about which collaborative topic you prefer to be a part of for fiscal year 16. We will work through everybody's preferences, and we will confirm your collaborative assignment by the end of the day or close of business on Wednesday, October 27th. We'll send out an email that lists out which topic you have been assigned to. From there, we ask that between then, the October 27th, and our first learning session on November 12th, that your team develops a map of the current process that's most involved or most central to the collaborative topic area that you're focusing on. So based on the assignment that you get from us of which Learning Collaborative topic you will be focusing on, you'll develop that process map of the current process that's in need of improvement. This has been, I know, a stressful point for some of our teams, making electronic process maps. They come in all shapes and forms, guys. If you want to make an electronic process map using the flowchart shapes on Word, absolutely, please do that. If you need to make out a list of your team's steps in that process, that's fine too. If you make it on sticky notes or a whiteboard and you want to take a picture, I don't care what format it comes in, as long as your team has had a robust conversation about the process involved, where you know where your pressure points are in that process and where there are truly areas for improvement. It's that conversation I really, really want your team to be able to have of how is this process going right now? Are we all doing it the same way, or do we have 3 different processes? And where are there opportunities for improvement so that you can come to the Learning Collaborative really ready to dive into the change package and pick a path that makes the most sense for your team's particular opportunity for improvement. So beyond just developing a process map, make sure that your team is having that conversation about how things are going and where you feel like there are true opportunities for improvement within your current process. And make sure that you bring the notes from that conversation, the notes from your process mapping session to that first learning session on November 12th. Guys, that's a lot of stuff. What questions do you have now? Now that you have homework, what questions do you have? We can go back to the previous slide, and I think that we can do that pretty easily in terms of the pre-work. So we'll move back to that just for a minute so that you can take a look and see if you have any other questions. I'm going to put this up, and then I'm going to mute myself for a minute so that you can kind of review, let it sink in. Lynette, if you or any other members have questions from here, feel free to just chime in.
An email that's come out 5 days webinar listing of all of the choices, correct?
Good. Yes, the email that you'll get from me will list out the 2 options that you have for the Learning Collaborative topics that you'll be able to respond back to. On the pre-work that you all have been assigned before our Learning Collaborative meeting on November 12th. If or your team starts to get a little jumbled up on your process mapping, as always, guys, just give me a call, send me an email, and I'll help walk you through that process. So I forward, I'll make sure that we check in at the very end if there are any other lingering questions that exist. Let's talk a little bit, just as a reminder, of the Michigan Home Visiting QI requirements. Like I mentioned earlier, end of a fiscal year, beginning of a fiscal year is just a really good chance to make sure that we're all on the same page of what everyone is expected to complete and what the requirements are contractually. So we expect, and all LIAs are required under the Michigan Home Visiting Initiative to actively conduct CQI work. This involves the one Michigan Home Visiting Initiative QI Learning Collaborative that we're talking about right now, and also one of 2 things, either 2 LIA-specific CQI projects or home visiting COIN participation. So if you are a COIN site, you don't have to do those 2 LIA-specific CQI projects. Your COIN work takes care of that requirement. And those who are not in the COIN, you're expected to complete 2 LIA-specific CQI projects. Embedded within this is reviewing quarterly CQI data reports for those areas of improvement for your teams to focus your efforts on. Part of your CQI work, you're required to conduct regular internal CQI team meetings, and I'll say this is something that that you guys have done really, really well in having regular meetings set up within staff meetings or standalone CQI team meetings. This is something that I'm really proud of our NFP teams for really embedding within their work. So we really recommend you meet biweekly if possible, and when you can, as many of you have done, incorporate them into pre-existing meetings so that you don't have to get everybody back together for another meeting that week. We make sure that you're submitting your CQI work. So this looks a little bit different depending on which flavor of CQI work we're talking about. You've heard me mention that the QI Learning Collaborative has a couple of expectations. That would be the monthly updates, so that's giving us data updates and project updates, and we will provide you with the tools to do that to us regularly and easily, and also giving us PDSA cycle summaries of how things worked out when you complete a PDSA cycle. For your LIA-specific work, we expect to continue to receive your team charters and your storyboards. We do that in a quarterly fashion. As you're all well familiar of this, you'll get an email update, a reminder from me at January 5th, before January 15th, April 15th, July 15th, and October 15th. We expect to receive anything that's been updated or completed sent to us then. I'll be honest, most of you hardly even need that reminder because a lot of you are just submitting to me on a regular basis as you update your team charter and complete a storyboard. Most of you don't even wait for the quarters. That can continue, but you can mark it on your calendars. It's by those dates that we expect to have any updated team charters and storyboards that have been completed from your LIA-specific work. Our COIN teams, we are following you sort of on the back end of our of what we can see through the COIN website, so we're able to track your progress that way of seeing your PDSA cycle updates there. We all ask that you participate in the CQI Community of Learning webinars. We have the dates set for this upcoming year's worth of webinars. They're going to be a little bit different coming up in that we've had our NFP LIAs separate from our EHS and HFA. And up in fiscal year 16, we're actually going to bring everybody back together who is working on the Home Visiting Initiative CQI work. We're going to have one webinar each quarter for all home visiting programs under the Home Visiting Initiative. So you can mark these dates in your calendar now, and you can expect to have a similar format of calling in and having a WebEx webinar to be able to walk through our presentation and our activities together. So I want to always make sure that you know that we are here to support you. So moving forward, you will continue to have support from your MPHI QA advisors. And for you all, our NFP programs, that's me, that's Angela. I will continue to comprehensively review your CQI documentation and provide feedback. My plan moving forward is that I will review your first complete draft. I'll do that very, very thoroughly and complete as usual, and then I'm happy to conduct additional reviews upon your request once we've seen your initial CQI documentation. When the QI Learning Collaborative will help support your teams with your monthly data and project updates and those PDSA cycle summaries. For those teams that are working on LIA-specific QI work, if you have any needs in terms of your team charters and your storyboards, I will certainly help with that and provide a review for those particular documents. And as I mentioned, home visiting COIN teams, we're reviewing documentation on an ongoing basis that you are submitting on the COIN site. So we'll continue to do that. And if you have any specific needs within any vein of the QI work that you're doing, all you need to do is connect with me and let me know what you need. And as always, I will provide ongoing guidance and coaching by email and phone. I'll continue to respond to your questions, troubleshoot issues that you guys are coming up against. If you are if looking to have a different measurement strategy, or you're thinking about a new check sheet or a way to collect the process change that you're instilling within your cycles, connect with me and I'll help you come up with those check sheets or think about your measurement strategies and use some of those other QI tools that I have available at my fingertips. So kind of reiterate what we're doing moving forward in terms of next steps and reminders. You'll have a homework assignment in terms of completing your CQI Learning Collaborative pre-work. You will get that tickle email from me that says, hey guys, don't forget, I want to hear about which Learning Collaborative topic you'd like to work on. From there, I expect a return email saying we have looked at our data and talked as a team and we prefer to work on this particular Learning Collaborative topic. From there, you will hear from us your confirmed topic. So just a couple days later, on October 27th, you can expect an email from our team letting you know which Learning Collaborative to focus on. And from there, your team can start that process map discussion of what is a process that's really central to this topic, where are we finding pressure points, where are we doing really, really well. And you'll be able to note your monthly data and project update due dates on calendars. So we'll make sure that these slides are available. So if you didn't write down some of those due dates of when documents are due, you'll have these available on a SharePoint site. You will start your LIA-specific and home visiting COIN work for fiscal year 16 moving forward. Now that we're in the beginning of that fiscal year, you can start off on your LIA-specific work, and our COIN teams are, I know, all deep in COIN work. We want to make sure that you note quarterly CQI documentation and webinar dates on calendars. That was that previous slide that we'll make sure that you have in hands after today. First Michigan Home Visiting Initiative grantee meeting is coming up. I've said this date purposefully about 500 times so that we make sure that we all have it on our calendars. It's November 12th, and we're really excited to see you guys from 9:30 to 3:30. The meeting will be held in Grand Rapids at the Crossroads Banquet and Conference Center. You have the address here and also in an email that Wynn has sent out to you all. So information is forthcoming about registration, and you'll get that shortly, but this is something that you can put in permanent marker on your calendars so that everyone is ready to attend. Steps and reminders, and I, as always, want to make sure that you aren't leaving confused or with questions in mind. So tell me your reactions to all of this information. Tell me the questions that you have. What's on your mind before we get off the phone, guys? I think, did somebody just unmute to ask a question? Okay, so I also have a slide that has my contact information, but I'm pretty sure you don't necessarily need that because most of you know how to find me. But if you need to connect with the NFP QI advisor, me, or Robin, who's the QI advisor for our HFA and EHS sites, here's our contact information, but I know a couple of you have me on speed dial, and you should keep me on speed dial for when questions come up. I want to hear how things are going. I want to hear the questions that are involved. This recording and the materials for today will be made available on SharePoint as soon as technology allows us to. So that should happen really soon. Have these slides so that you can refer back to any of those dates. But in the meantime, if you need anything else before you hear from me with that topic selection email, please get in touch with me and let me know what questions you have or how I can help support your team moving forward. Any last questions that we want to make sure we get out before we end the call? We've been gifted with about 15 extra minutes for their day. Please be in touch if you have any questions. And again, we're really looking forward to seeing you all in November and kicking off this new fiscal year of learning collaborative work. So thank you all for your time and energy today and your good comments and questions. I'll be in touch by email and phone, and I will look forward to seeing your faces in November, everyone. Take care and talk to you later.